The Floor Academy podcast is sponsored by Trelama, the trade labor marketplace, where businesses can find skilled trade labor, such as flooring installers, and where flooring installers and other skilled tradespeople can find permanent or project work. You can set up your profile at trelama.com, TRALAMA.com, or download the app from the Apple App Store or Google Play. And remember, Trelama is always free for skilled tradespeople. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hedin, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Phoenix, Arizona. We are here to talk with flooring professionals from all over the country about the issues that matter to you. I want to encourage you to learn while you earn. This week's guest is Jim Aaron. Jim has been a territory manager for William M. Byrd and Mohawk before moving into positions with the parent company of Carpet One. When the director position at the Floor Covering Education Foundation became available, he wasn't initially excited about it. After some wise counsel, he was made aware of what the position could actually accomplish. Listen in as we talk about what the FCEF's goal is, how they are currently working to accomplish it, and why this isn't their problem to fix, but all of ours. Find out how you can get involved and make a difference right now. Jim Aaron, are you on the line?
Hey there. How are you? I am on the line.
Good. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This was a fun one. I didn't even know FCEF had a booth over at Surfaces, and then all of a sudden I started seeing all these pictures with my buddy Ken Ballin show up, and I was like, "What is going on?" I was like, "Oh, there's this poster." So, I got yanked over there. I think Marquise Wright came along and yanked me over there for an interview with you guys, and then I got my picture with Ken, and then I found you the last day, and we started chatting because I wanted to know what I can do this, Floor Covering Education Foundation, FCEF, was doing.
Yep.
It's alphabet soup out there, man. It is hard to keep track of all of them.
We've got a lot of acronyms in our business, don't we?
We do. But let's have, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? How are you involved? What's the quick, 2-3 minute overview of who Jim Aaron is and why he's now the director at FCEF?
Yeah, a great question. Glad to share that. So, look, I'm like a lot of folks in the industry. I've been in it most of my adult life. In fact, all of my adult life. I actually started working for my uncle as a part-time job when I was going to college. He had a flooring store. Actually, it was back in the day. It was a little bit more of a decorating store, right? You've seen these places that sell a little bit of everything: countertops, wallpaper, paint, flooring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I got into it. I worked for him part-time, like I said, while I was going to college. Graduated college, and, look, I enjoyed retail, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so my first real job, I guess you would say, out of college was for wholesale distribution. I worked for William Byrd and Company. At the time, they were an Armstrong distributor based in Charleston, South Carolina, covering a lot of the East Coast and most of the Deep South. And worked for those guys selling Armstrong, and then, of course, Bruce Hardwood. And I think I was one of the first Pergo reps in the entire nation. That was a fun time. And so I worked for those guys for about 12 years. I left those guys to go to work for Mohawk about the time Mohawk was getting into hard surfaces. In fact, they were doing so good with hard surfaces, but they were letting their carpet guys kind of double bag it, right? They were letting the carpet guys try to sell some hard surface. It did well enough. They had to develop a separate sales force, and I was a part of that. So I worked with those guys for 5 years, and then, call it a midlife crisis. I thought to myself, do I want to do this? I mean, it's a good gig. Being a rep is a fine thing to do, but do I want to do it until I retire? And the answer was no. And so I thought long and hard about what I liked to do at the time. And honestly, I liked training. If I were a rep for a particular store, say you had a store, I would come into your store, I'd spend a few minutes with you as the store owner. But really, I like to spend a lot of time training retail salespeople. And because I always found that retail salespeople can take a customer anywhere they want to go, anywhere they want to take them, right? They can take them to any product. And I found that those retail salespeople would take a customer to products they knew best. And my goal was to make sure that they knew my products best. And so I enjoyed training. So I actually, at the time, CCA Global, the parent company of Carpet One, Flooring America, ProSource, and others, was actually looking, believe it or not, for a hard surface trainer. And so it was a match made in heaven, and I was in that role for 4.5 years. So a lot of the country. This was back when sales training classes were done in person, not necessarily in webinars or in Zoom. And so traveled, I got to see nearly all of the 50 states and all of the provinces in Canada over those 4.5 years. And then that brings it up to 2008. And Eric Demery, who was the president of Carpet One at the time, offered me a position as VP of merchandising for Carpet One. And by the way, I was still living in South Carolina up until this point. And in 2008, I moved myself and my family to St. Louis, where the CCA headquarters are, and worked that job for, like I say, right at 13 years. And end of last year, end of 2020, first of 2021, I got a call from the folks that were on the board of the FCEF asking me if I would be interested in being the executive director of the Floor Covering Education Foundation. And initially, I wasn't, but the more I looked into it, the more I found out about it, it really excited me. So I accepted the job at the end of January and started the middle of February. So here I am, executive director of the Floor Covering Education Foundation.
Okay. And the mission of FCEF is what at this point?
No, that's a great question. I think, a lot of people aren't familiar with the FCEF basically and what we do, right? So I think we certainly need to explain it. So if I can, honestly, I'm just going to literally read to you the mission statement,
okay,
right, from our business plan. The mission statement of the Floor Covering Education Foundation is to provide awareness of the job opportunities and career pathways available in the flooring industry, improve the perceptions of those pathways, connect individuals to training opportunities within the industry, scholarship that training, and place those individuals in jobs with the flooring industry. Now, that's broad, and you probably noticed, well, it didn't mention installation in there anyway. But no, installation is the first part of it, right? Ultimately, we see the foundation as something that's going to live for a very long time. So in 10 years, when we think we think we're going to have a significant progress, a lot sooner than 10 years. But 10 years from now, maybe our focus moves beyond installation into some other area. So it's broad. The mission statement is broad, and it's broad enough to cover not just installation today, but to be open to other areas of the industry further on down the road. But installation, absolutely, and addressing the lack of qualified labor is, without a doubt, our number one objective.
Okay. And I think that's great. That definitely needs to happen. I love that you have the keyword to me in that mission statement was perception. I think, sadly, you see things posted on social media and it's like, get your kids involved in the trades. And, there's welding and plumber, electrician, framer. There's all these trades listed. I never see flooring listed. So apparently we're not a trade, and the perception of our trade is very poor.
Yeah, listen, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, thank you for saying that. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because those, 6 little words are what I added. Of course, look, the FCEF was formed and created prior to me coming on board, naturally, and we can talk about that, and I'm sure we will. And they already had this mission statement developed. But what was missing were those 6 words I just mentioned: improve the perception of those pathways. I inserted that into the business plan because I couldn't agree more, Kyle. I think there's a lot of people who think it's unskilled. I mean, look at the number of people that say they're going to do it themselves, right? Which I think is ridiculous. But it's not just the people that thinks anybody can do it. Look, I think there's parts of our industry and quite frankly, companies within our industry that have perpetuated this I don't know, lack of professionalism, the perception of, like, so for example, let's take the home centers. When they advertise free installation or $49 whole house installation, that, first of all, I can't believe anybody is really foolish enough to believe that, but there are. And secondly, that so devalues the quality of good installation. And so I think improving the perception is critical. It's key. That's a big part of what we need to do moving forward.
No, I agree. I mean, you don't see cabinet companies advertising free installation and then their cabinets are just twice as much. That's not something happening in that field. So I agree. You don't see an electrician coming in and telling you, oh, free installation, but my wire's marked up 300%. Like, so why? That's the confusing part. Who was the marketing genius that started this for the box stores to devalue a person's job? That would be an interesting thing to find out.
Now, look, I think it would be, but I think at the end of the day, I think what they've realized is that consumers are going to buy on that. At the end of the day, consumers look at that and they really do think they're getting it free. Look, when I was with Carpet One, we encouraged our Carpet One retailers to tell the consumers, look, I can break out the estimate, line by line if you want, but really all that matters is the bottom line, right? I mean, if you're going to compare prices, compare the net cost, right? What you're going to write a check for to me versus what you're going to write a check to for the home centers. And really it's judging against the total installed price, right? And when you do that, I think most consumers, when they see the total installed price compared to an independent retailer, that's, they kind of wake up and realize it then. But you're right. Somebody a long time ago figured out consumers were going, look, they do it with the price of their product too, right? I mean, they've got ceramic tile in there for God knows how cheap, right? But again, you want to get it installed. And to your point, the labor's marked up to 300%.
Yeah. Yep. And that's if only the marked up labor was going to the laborers, because I think, you mentioned and you hit on the point of there's poor training going on, right? Like this whole cycle has been perpetuated that installers are not being trained properly, right? And then you have the DIY products and the click together stuff, and homeowners are doing it themselves. And so now it's not this skilled trade, but I also think that there's a problem in that a lot of times the young guy that you've been training for, if you can get a guy to stick around longer than a month or he's there a year, he catches a glimpse of the invoice laying around on the last day of the project that the client needs to pay. So he sees that, for a week's worth of labor, you're going to get $5-6 grand. And he's wondering why I only get $500. So he says, well, screw this. I'm going to quit. I can do it. I've been doing it for, a year or two. And he goes out and he says, instead of being at $5,000 or $6,000 for the week, well, I'll do it for $4,500.
Right.
And then he gets busy enough that he needs a guy. That guy sees his $4,500 and he goes out and he says, well, screw it. I can get $4 grand in a week for myself instead of $500. And it's perpetuated this horrible situation of unskilled laborers, but also these guys are running businesses and don't realize it. And they're not educated on business. And so are there plans for FCEF to incorporate business training besides just the skills training into what you're doing?
Yeah, so great question. I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of people who are good at a particular thing, but they're not businessmen, right? I mean, they just look. I've known guys for a number of years that have been installers, and look, they've got in trouble with taxes and things like that, not paying their taxes. I mean, it's a business. I mean, you got to run it like a business. So, Let me be very clear. And just a point of clarification, I know it can be confusing. And some people that I talk to, that I've been talking to for months, still, I need to kind of remind them, the FCEF ourselves are not doing any training at all. We are connecting individuals to training entities. And the training entities that, we're working with that are approved to receive our scholarships are NWFA, of course, National Wood Flooring Association, CTEF, which is, again, Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, and CFI. And so right now, those are the only approved training entities that have been approved by our scholarship committee of the board to receive scholarships. Now, I believe, last time I spoke to Michael Martin, I believe that either Michael Martin, by the way, runs NWFA. I believe they've either got some business-related classes in there. Anita Howard works with Michael, and I think she kind of oversees a lot of that. Either they've got the business classes in their online university, or else they are about to add them. And by the way, here's the other thing. The World Floor Covering Association, the WFCA, which you could really say the FCEF was born from the WFCA. The WFCA has a great online university, and I know they've got a number of business classes in there. And by the way, all of these training entities are always updating their online university classes and content. And I've talked to several of them, and they really want to do a better job of having some robust business training courses as a part of their curriculum.
Okay. So that being said, how does a guy like me go about trying to get scholarship money to get to a class or get, the online portion paid for so that I can start getting some of this training and not necessarily pay out of pocket for it?
That's a good question. So a couple of things. As far as the scholarships right now, again, by the way, let me back up and say, we have, of course, a board of directors. And of course, I am accountable and responsible to that board of directors to make sure we're working towards achieving the goals set forth in our mission statement and the objectives that we've all developed, and really following the business plan that's been presented and approved to the board of directors. And so the scholarship committee has decided, and by the way, I agree with this decision, that at least initially, our scholarship funds are going to go to new people, bringing new blood into the business. Do we want to get to a point where we're scholarshiping training for existing installers that are already out there? Yes, absolutely. But right now the focus is bringing new blood and getting them through at least some basic training, right? And let me talk about the scholarship amounts for just a minute. What we're scholarshiping is 1/2 of the cost of any of the training that's been approved by the committees. And there's some of the courses from each one of those entities I mentioned, NWFA, CTEF, and CFI. Basically, they're entry-level courses. So, they've approved the 2-week CFI carpet course, whether it be residential or commercial, the 5-week carpet course, the 3-day introductory class at NWFA, and so forth and so on. Again, so our scholarships are half of that tuition cost, and it is a lifetime maximum of $2,500. So to give you an example, the CFI 5-week class, it costs $5,000. And by the way, we've already scholarshiped a number of people through that program. And what we did is we went ahead and scholarshiped the 25 half of it, 2,500 of the 5,000. And so those folks are at their lifetime maximum. We wouldn't be able to do anything more with those guys right now. Look, those are the plans today. Could this change as the needs change? Absolutely. But you've got to have some rules and regulations and at least some guidelines and policies to begin with. And that's where that's the policy today, is that right now the scholarship funds are going to brand new recruits.
Okay. So you've paid for some, I know this 5-week course exists. I think it's a great course. I don't do any carpet, but to be able to get hands-on for 5 weeks with great trainers, that's a really valuable option to get a guy jump-started in this career field. So where did you find the people to scholarship? Is it just like you worked with CFI and they said, look, we have all these new people? Are you willing to help any of them out? Is it that they approached you? Like, how is this exchange happening?
That's great. Again, a great question. You hit the nail on the head to some degree. There have been some that have been that way. Look, we don't want to give away the money if we don't need to give away the money, right? By the way, running a charitable foundation, and that's what we are. We're a 501c3 organization, right? So you got to be good stewards of the money, right? You got to, because our donors are ponying up this cash, and they want to make sure it's well spent. And so we have to be very, very good stewards of the money. So what I mean by that is we don't want to give away money we don't have to. We don't want to spend money we don't have to. We've got to be very smart about where the money goes. So there have been cases where CFI has said, listen, there's these guys that, and by the way, I say guys, it can be gals too, right? And that's another topic I'm sure we could talk about. There's a lot of females in our business and a lot of females entering the installation business, which I think is fantastic. But anyway, so they called up and said, hey, we've got these guys. They want to come. They want to be a part of it, but they need some help. They're probably not going to come if they don't get some financial help. And so that's an area where we would step in. Look, I've been in the role, since I guess the middle of February, and not long after that. The folks at Floor Covering Weekly were very kind in letting me start a column that's going to be published every 3 months, I think it is. So my first column went out. It actually created a lot of interest. A lot of people started learning about what we did. And honestly, we've received scholarships through that. Retailers that saw that column in Floor Covering Weekly and said, hey, I know a guy and I'm going to hire him and get him trained and he's going to work with my crew. But yeah, this would be great if we could get some financial assistance.
Okay.
So those are some examples. And let me tell you where another place where we've actually been able to scholarship some folks. And it's a program that CFI had already had in place before I came on board, but they were working with Goodwill Industries. Now, I don't know about you, but I used to think that Goodwill was just a place that, people bought secondhand stuff, right? But in reality, Goodwill spends a lot of time and effort and money investing in their employees. In fact, their internal motto is we're a place for second chances. So you'll see people working at Goodwill that, may have been down on their luck. They may have come out of rehab or something. They may find themselves underemployed or unemployed for a long period of time, and they need help. Well, Goodwill in Augusta, Georgia, and by the way, this is another thing I've found, that Goodwill works in districts, right? So there's what they call the CSRA district, Central Savannah River Area District, which includes Aiken, South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, all the way down to Macon, Georgia. And in that district, they have a career center that's actually a part of Goodwill. It's called the Helms Career Center, HELMS, Helms Career Center. And in that career center, they teach a number of different things. They computer skills. They actually have a culinary school inside this career center. So I don't know exactly how the connection happened with Goodwill and CFI. This happened like middle of last year, during the pandemic, actually. But Goodwill said, hey, we want to do this. We want to put people through a 5-week CFI class. So they got the 8 individuals. And by the way, I think we've just finished our 3rd class. Again, the first one was, I think, in the fall of last year. We've already had 2 this year. Each time, 8 people have gone through the class. What's cool about it is it's held right there in Augusta, Georgia. They don't have to travel. We brought the CFI instructors in for the 5 weeks. And so that's a cool program. And so we're going to do at least a couple of more of those in the CSRA area throughout 2021. And actually, after I get off this phone call with you, I have a call with those folks down in Augusta, Georgia, to discuss how we duplicate this. There's already interest in expanding this to Savannah, Georgia, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. in 2 other districts that Goodwill operates. So, and again, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but that's the kind of things we're looking for. These are the kind of things we're looking to duplicate, right? We've already shown that it's successful in Augusta, Georgia. We've got success stories out of those students. They're all employed right there in the CSR area, working for independent retailers in that area. And again, we've proven that works. Now the thing is, let's expand it, and let's go to these other areas, and let's do what we can to move that movement across the country.
Okay. Now, is there any kind of stipulations on you're receiving the scholarship funds and, you need to stay gainfully employed in this field for 2 years? Otherwise you're paying it back. Once again, right. Like you said, you have to be a good steward with the money. So is there any kind of, does the retailer pick it up if that person leaves and you're going to get it reimbursed and you can reinvest in somebody else? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and something we certainly can explore. I will tell you that we are keeping track. We are going to have a person eventually on staff that's totally dedicated to maintaining our list of all of the people that we've scholarshiped, right? And keeping track with them, making sure they're still in the industry, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. We don't have a system where we say, hey, if you're not still working as an installer for a year or 2 after, you got to pay it back. Look, I've got 2 daughters that just went through college. Actually, one of them still in college, and they get scholarships, and there's really no stipulation about you've got to stay in this career after college graduation, or else you got to pay the scholarship back. So now we haven't really looked at that as far as paying it back. I don't know. We'd have to explore that and see if that's a viable thing to do. But no, look, we want to make sure that our people, again, we think if we can find these things where somebody has committed 5 weeks, right, of their time, and they learn a skill and they're gainfully employed, our hope right now is that they're going to stay and realize that, look, you're only getting started, and the money's going to get better, the time's going to get better, your jobs are going to get better, and hopefully that helps keep them in the business.
Okay. Now, as you said, you had a class late last year. You've had a couple this year already. It seems that there's people able to take classes everywhere else. So I believe the initial announcement of FCEF was about 2 years ago. What it was? Yeah. Like what's been going on? It to me, and the perception from a lot of people in the industry, and we've kind of already had this conversation, so I'm not too worried about saying it, but there's a bunch of old guys sitting around on a board talking about let's make a change, but then there's rarely does it feel like there's action. So it appears like 2 years later now there's some action happening, which is great to see. But what was going on for 2 years?
Yeah, so great question. So actually, it was December 2019. That was, if you go back and look at the pages on the WFCA website, and I think there's a link there. There's a FCEF page on the World Floor Covering Association website that is dedicated to the FCEF, and it has the video. It has the YouTube video of the press announcement that was made in Chattanooga by Scott Humphreys, Deb DeGraff, and Don Roberts. And by the way, I think even Marquis, and we'll talk about him later, I think Marquis was even on hand for that announcement. So it was December 2019. And, so that was the announcement. Then you get into January and lots of conventions. Of course, we had surfaces going on. I was with CCA at the time. You had the CCA convention. And things were ramping up. Steve Abernathy, who is the CFO for the World Floor Covering Association, was acting director. He was interim director. And they were making plans to hire a permanent director. And he was actually doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, filing a 5013C status. And by the way, that's an incredible amount of work to get, the IRS to recognize you as a charitable foundation. So doing all of that, and then of course March hit, and the pandemic hit. Right, the middle of March, everything shut down, and including this. Right, businesses shut down, and honestly, the Floor Covering Education Foundation became an afterthought. It was really pushed kind of to the side for a while. Quite frankly, if you talk to a lot of retailers, there was a period of about 3 months there, March, April, and May, where they wondered if they were going to have a business anymore, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because nobody was buying anything. And so then things started amping up back in the fall of 2020. And by I guess it was the end of November is when the board of directors for the Floor Covering Education Foundation said, you know what, we're not all going to die, and our businesses are not all going to close. In fact, business now is better than it's been in years. And so it's exacerbating the problem of the lack of qualified labor. So, let's kick this thing back into high gear. And that's when they posted the job for a permanent executive director. And I went through the, of course, interview process, and thankfully I was selected. And, I turned in my notice at CCA in January and started in February. So, yeah, look, I think, there was a time there where everything was quite dormant, really. It was really put on the back burner. So I've been in the role since the middle of February. There's a lot to do. There's a lot going on. We've made a lot of contacts. I think we've made a lot of progress on a lot of fronts. But bear in mind, there is still an enormous amount of work to do, an enormous amount of work. So, so that's kind of where we are. Honestly, you take a look at the fact that from December, of 2019, a little bit of activity, and then honestly, it just lay dormant while COVID was dominating our lives for a while. It picked it back up this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense when you look at the timeline that way. So you had told me when we were talking at Surfaces that you went out and you went to a high school and you were going to give this talk of, hey, look, there's these amazing opportunities out there. So go tell the audience a little bit about what happened, the thoughts that were going through your head as you were doing that.
Well, yeah, okay, this is good. So, it actually started by a friend of mine who owns a Carpet One store down in College Station, Texas. Right, actually, a couple, Ron and Claudia Smith, wonderful people. They own Aggieland Carpet One down there. And so she reached out to me not long after I was in this role and said, hey, can you guys help out with training at our technical center here? Bryan, Texas sits right outside of College Station. It's a bedroom community of College Station, Texas. And they have this enormous, wonderful, state-of-the-art technical center there where they teach a lot of different trades. They have a construction path, right? Like a lot of schools do, right? And in that construction path, it's basically all construction. They have construction 101, 102. They do everything from framing to roofing to electric. So these students learn a little bit about all things regarding residential construction, but really not a lot about any one thing.
Okay.
But Claudia reached out to me and said, listen, the carpet or flooring section of this course is coming up, and the guy who's instructing this doesn't feel real good about flooring. He's not a flooring expert. And do you guys have anybody that can help with this? So I reached out to CFI, of course, and talked to Robert and his son Jonathan. We had Jonathan come over to Bryan, Texas, and teach that flooring class for one solid week, right? With all the students. And again, this is something extra we were doing. And again, we didn't expect these guys to go out and become installers the next week. I mean, they're still in school. We didn't even expect them to be, installers, over the summer.
Yeah.
But part of this is, exposing people to the opportunity, exposing young people to this opportunity. So I went down there because I wanted to meet the folks at the technical college. I wanted to see what Jonathan was doing and just wanted to be a part of it. So while I was there, the principals of a couple of different high schools knew I was going to be in town, and they said, look, would you come and speak to our classes that are in, going through these construction paths? I said, absolutely, sure. So I'm standing in front of a group of kids. Look, and there's probably 25 of them, and they're all looking at me. And I'm telling them, flooring installation is a great way to go, right? I mean, you can make a good living. I'm sure you haven't thought about this as a career path, but it's something I want you to consider. And, it just hit me. Here I am standing there and, my slacks and my sports coat and my press shirt and my shiny shoes. And I'm sure they're thinking, well, this guy went to college and doggone it, he's not installing. So why is he telling us to do it, right? And then I thought, what we've got to do, we've got to get a better spokesman than me, right? We've got to get people that are living it, that are doing it,
Mm-hmm.
because these 11th and 12th graders are going to listen to somebody like Marquis Wright or Ken Ballin or Shannon Violet or one of those people that are doing it, right? First of all, they're younger than me, right? Because I'm in my 50s. We need somebody that they can relate to, somebody in their 20s, early 30s, and somebody that's doing it, right? And not just doing it, but that says, hey, I'm glad I'm doing this. This is a good career. It's been good to me. I love what I'm doing. And yes, for that reason, you should consider it. So that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And look, we've got, and I know you were there at Surfaces. You saw our posters with Ken and Marquis. And Marquis was actually in our booth for a while. It was great having him there. But we're going to use spokesmen, and we're not done. I mean, we want to pull females into this, right? I want to show a vast diversity of installers, right? Hispanic, Latino, you name it, female, whatever. I want to show that it's a career open to anyone, anybody can come into this. And we need those people that are going to be our advocates and our spokespeople to say, hey, listen up, take a listen. This is the way you need to go.
No, I couldn't agree more. For as many people that struggle in this industry, living project to project, there's just as many people that have made a very, very good living for themselves and built a solid business, whether they're subcontractors, they run their own show and find all their own work. There's a good mix of both, but you're going to find that in any industry, I think. I don't care if you look at electrical engineers or software developers, right? Like, how many times does a startup fail? And then they make, it's like 3 or 4 startups that they make before they get it right. But you had to make all those mistakes along the way to become successful. So if you can get the right people advocating for you and you get the right training in front of these younger people that you're speaking to, I think it'll become a really good system moving forward to draw attention and make the future generation successful. I'm less worried about the quote unquote old guys in this industry because they're kind of stuck in their ways. Most of them, they're not up to date on technology. They're not interested in being trained anymore. And they're years away from retirement in general, right? What was the study, right? The average age of the installer is like 55 or something like that.
Yeah, it's 55. And every time they do this, the age continues to increase, right?
Correct.
Which shows that historically, at least for the last 10 to 15 to 20 years, we just haven't been bringing the younger blood in. If we were, that number would be leveling out or either going in the other direction, but it hasn't. It's continued to creep up. And look, I've installed floors in my own home, and I have regretted it. There's no doubt I've regretted it. But, I know how it tears on a person's body. I know how it did just mine with, a week worth of work. And some of these guys that have been doing this since their early 20s and they're in their 50s, it's a little tough, right? And so, that's a consideration as well. So, no, there's no doubt we've got to bring new blood into it, and that's and younger blood. And that's another thing. I think if we're going to do this, we've got to expose this concept, this idea of flooring installation as a career pathway early on before people have selected something else to do, right? It's like me. I've been in the flooring industry for 35 years now. If I had started with something else, I might have been in another field for 35 years. I don't know. But I think we've got to get people early on while they're making that career decision and pathway early on. Now, that's not to say we're not also looking at people in their 30s. If you take a look at some of the folks that went through that Goodwill or the CFI training through Goodwill, I mentioned earlier, some of those folks were, quite frankly, underemployed. And there's one gentleman who was flipping burgers at Burger King, making, I don't know, $12 an hour. Now he's in his 30s and he's making very, very good money as a flooring installer. So, we got to get them early. I guess that's the message.
No, I can agree with that. Look, I started, June 1st was 6 years. So I started at 32 and I chose to be in this field. I looked at the skills I had because I was in a position of finding a new career path yet again in my life. And I sat down, I analyzed what skills I had. I went through, I like working with wood and settled on, now what different trades are there? And finally I was like, oh, there's wood flooring. Like that would be fun. And cold called a bunch of contractors, got 2 of them to hire me. Here I am. But there's not a lot of people, I think, sitting down and evaluating their lives in their early to mid 30s and saying, I have some hand skills. Maybe flooring's the answer, right?
Right.
So to be able to, I think the other issue is that little boys and girls can drive around in cars with mom, right? And they get to see the big excavator and they see the construction guy on the side of the road. Like it's a viable career because it's seen. You don't see flooring take place usually.
No,
and not often. It's not something you see every day, right? Maybe your parents get the floors redone before you move into a house. You may not even see the guys. Maybe a remodel happens while you live in it, but how many people can't even afford the service? So there's a whole slew of people that are never exposed to it because they never see it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's the phrase I use is it's not even in the consideration set. I mean, if a young person says, okay, college is not for me, and by the way, I think there's a huge trend happening. I think there is a sea change coming.
Oh yeah. I
think the talk about look, you don't have to go far to hear stories about people that have gotten gone through college. They've got massive amount of debt, and now they can't find a job in their chosen career path. And look, I don't get me started on that. I can go on forever about that. But I think a lot of people are realizing, you know what? We told a whole generation, actually probably a couple of generations, a huge lie. And that lie was that you had to go to college to be successful. Look, I went to college, okay? I mean, I don't regret it. But I would tell you, there's a lot of people that shouldn't have gone, that didn't need to go.
Yeah.
And look, I think if there are people like that today, and I think there's going to be more people like that as we move forward that say college is not for me. Okay, now if it's not for me, what am I going to do? And then when they think about all the things that come under what am I going to do, they don't even consider flooring installation. It's just not even in the consideration set. We've got to change that. We've got to change that. I think there's a number of things we can do to change that, and we've got to address it. I mean, and one of the things that, I'm making contacts right now with the Association for High School Guidance Counselors. I'm finding out there's an association for everything, Kyle. And there is an association of high school guidance counselors. In fact, just yesterday, I signed up the SCEF to be an associate member of that association, so we can get on their mailing list, so I can go to their next convention, so we can start getting the message out to high school guidance counselors, because I don't even think they know. I don't even think they know that this is an area that they can direct students to.
I'm sure you're right. It's, I was fortunate enough that the high school I went to in Chicago, well, outside of Chicago, but we had a really good vocational program. And so our wood shop was one of the best in a 3-state area between Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. We had electronics. There was, I believe they had like welding and some kind of metal fabrication stuff going on. Like there was good hands-on skills being taught, and you could be identified still as the kid that, look, man, you're getting C's and D's. Like, book smarts may not be for you, but this program over here, like, you may love. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not being able to compete as a mathlete in high school. Like, everyone has certain skills, and we need to be able to identify them and get people pointed in the right direction. So that shaming, that, you know, the stereotype of you're just like this dumb jock, like, here, go weld something, like, it kind of needs to exist, in my opinion. And so for you to be able to, who knows, right? You make posters for this counselor association, and they plaster them in their walls, or on their walls across the country. Maybe some kid sees it and he's like, well, what's this opportunity over here? How do I do this?
Right.
That's way better. But now how do we get, I think a lot of schools have lost all of their vocational training. So is there any work happening to get flooring training into high schools anywhere? I know we talked, and you have like a college thing happening, which is amazing, right? Like that's like a good program. Is there anything happening on like a high school level that you know of?
Well, let's talk about the college thing, and I'll circle back around to the high school thing, because I'm really excited to tell everybody what's going on with the college thing. So I will tell you that a lot of the things that are taking up a lot of my time every week, of course, are, you know, running the foundation. You know, when you first get started, there's a lot of things you just got to have in place, right? I mean, all the way, believe it or not, all the way down to silly little details like, well, hey, we've got to create a scholarship application, right? So, you know, just stuff like that. So there's been a lot of that behind the scenes operationally that we had to take care of. But in addition to that, a lot of the things we're working on have been things that have been kind of brought to me. Honestly, I've done some research and reaching out and trying to find opportunities to work on, but a lot of the things that are taking up my hours in a day, in a week, are things that have been brought to me because people have said, hey, I heard you're in this role now. Let's do this. Let's explore this. What do you think? And we follow it, and it turns into something. Case in point, when I worked for CCA Global, Carpet One, there was a guy that I knew pretty well. His name is Victor Anderson. Victor Anderson is the owner of Anderson Carpet One in Alto, Georgia. Victor also ran to be a state legislature for the state of Georgia in his district. He did this in 2020. He won the race, and he's now one of the Georgia state representatives in his district. So, you know, he reached out to me a while back and said, hey, I'm in this new role, and I think there's some things that we can do. Let's have a discussion. So we got on the phone and we talked about it. And he said, I think, you know, I've got some contacts with the technical college system of Georgia. Let's pursue this. We put together a Zoom call just to explore it. I mean, it was a short call, but as I asked the people at the technical college system of Georgia, and by the way, these are state employees. These are people that run the entire system, right? They're all the way at the top. You know, they're the ones that make the decision. I asked them over Zoom, how many of your technical colleges in the state of Georgia offer a flooring installation career pathway or a course of study? They sat there with blank looks and they said, well, none of them. And I said, why is that? And they said, we don't know. Nobody's ever asked us this question. We have no idea. I said, would you be interested? And they said, absolutely. Well, especially once we talked them through. And by the way, we had some retail representatives, Victor being one of them, that told them the great need that we have of people in this industry. So fast forward, we put together a couple of more Zoom calls. In fact, we had one just yesterday. And on the call yesterday were probably 6 different people from the Technical College System of Georgia, TCSG. In addition, a couple of the presidents of the local colleges, local technical colleges in Georgia. In addition, we had Victor Anderson, the state rep, and we had, most importantly, though, Kyle, we had the folks from CFI. We had John McHale and Robert Barton on from CFI. We had Anita Howard, Michael Martin on from NWFA. We had Bart Bottega and Scott Carruthers on from the Tile Council and CTEF. Mm-hmm. And basically we were saying, okay, what do we got to do? And they said, you got to build a curriculum. I said, great. FCEF is not here to build a curriculum. We're here to facilitate this happening. So the people that can build a curriculum on the call. So anyway, here's what we're doing. We've all gone to work, and we're all working on this initiative. And our plan is to introduce a 15-week, a full semester course of study approved by the Georgia Technical College System at the state level, and implemented in at least 2 technical colleges in the state of Georgia starting in January. We feel that that's going to be incredibly successful, and once we get that success underneath our belt, we're going to expand it. Mm-hmm. We're learning a lot right now. We're learning a lot going through this. None of us have ever done anything like this before, right? But we're learning a lot as we go. And so now that we've gone through it, and as we go through it, we're learning even more, so we can take this to another state and then another state. But what I'm finding is you've got to get it approved on the state level first, right? So that's going to, once we get this rocking and rolling and moving along, we're going to move to another state, and then to another state, and then to another state. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited about it. And I think it's going to be a great way. But listen, you take a look at technical colleges. I mean, there's a technical college just a few miles from my house here, and I was looking on their website just yesterday. They've got all of these other trades listed. They've got, plumbing, welding, HVAC, you name it, but they don't have flooring. And why not? I mean, why not? Flooring is every bit as a part of the house as your plumbing and electric and everything else. In fact, the other things I've just mentioned, they're not seen. They're behind the wall.
Correct.
Right? Flooring is right there. You walk on it. You look at it every day. And so, that's one of our missions. That's one of my, I guess, the thing that I'm really passionate about. I think the fact that we don't, and if there are courses of study available in some technical colleges around the U.S., I'm just not aware of them. And I think the fact that they don't exist has absolutely perpetuated. It's part of the, again, there's a lot of things that I've mentioned earlier that have perpetuated this problem, and the lack of presence in our technical colleges of flooring installation training is another thing that has yet perpetuated the issue we deal with today.
No, I agree. I think so. By you going and getting this approved, and we did have this talk at services, I think you missed this point, was that once you get this curriculum approved at a state level, you can put it in any technical college in Georgia. You just have to bring them the curriculum and say, hey, look, we've already developed it. Let's find a teacher and get this in your school. But
excellent point.
I think once you have one state on board, you've already got the system. You may have to change a couple things in the curriculum for another state because their standards are slightly different, but that's a lot quicker of a change than anything else. So once you kind of knock one out, it seems like you can move a little bit more quickly to get it established in other areas. Then
no doubt.
The other thing that I see, and I was thinking about as you were talking, was that you've mentioned how none of these vocational schools, or at least that we can find, offer a flooring program. There's a lot of other things. And I know for a fact that you can still probably watch daytime TV, and there's some for-profit 6-week HVAC school that you can go get registered with. So if anybody's listening and wants to make some money, and you don't want to be on the floor anymore, go start a for-profit flooring school in somewhere where land is cheap and you can get yourself like a 40 by 40 steel building, because I bet you there's people, you put some ads on TV, I bet you'll get people coming to you. So there's a business idea. Go get off the floor and do that for me.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna shamelessly plug CFI and NWFA and CTEF. I think these guys really do a fantastic job.
Oh, no doubt.
And ultimately, if you take a look at what these guys do, and my goal is to stretch their capacity, right? I want them. I want to create a problem for all three of these training organizations. And the problem is they've got so many people signing up for their classes, they don't know what to do, which, is another topic about taking training local. Yeah, let me go back to this other thing you mentioned about the colleges, though. Yeah, once it's approved at the state level, and that is key. Once the curriculum is approved at the state level, any of the colleges in the state can implement it. Now, so like, for example, in the state of Georgia, there are 22 separate technical colleges. And with those 22 separate technical colleges, they actually have 88 campuses, believe it or not. 88 campuses. That's just in the state of Georgia. Now, here's the thing. If you read some of the things that I've written, and by the way, I wrote another Floor Covering Weekly column that's going to be published, I think, in next week's issue. And I say next week, it's going to be, I guess, the first week in July. And so in that column, I talk about the fact that there are things that we could do on a national basis as the Floor Covering Education Foundation, but there are also things that need to be executed locally, right? And let's face it, right now, you talk about being good stewards of the donor's money. Right now, the Floor Covering Education Foundation really only has 2 employees, and that's myself and Kay Whitener. Thank God for Kay Whitener. She's my right hand, and she is incredibly valuable, but it's just us 2. I can't, quite frankly, be bogged down in visiting all 22 of these technical colleges in Georgia. So what we're going to be looking for is local advocates, local assistants, a team of foot soldiers, in essence, right? Where people locally say, I am going to benefit if there are more installers, like flooring retailers, right? A group of them coming together saying, hey, we're going to benefit if there are more installers. Let's take what the FCEF has done and let's work it locally. I mean, look, there's this, okay, I just pick another city in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, right? There's technical colleges in Savannah, Georgia. What if 3 or 4 retailers could put aside their differences, right, and in competition with one another long enough to say, hey, let's get that curriculum that was developed, and let's go to our local technical colleges, let's get this implemented. Now, when working with those guys yesterday in a call at the technical college system, they said, what we need, the curriculum, of course, we need the space, and, we need an instructor. So that's another thing. We got to find instructors. You just mentioned, starting a school. Well, if this thing in the technical college system works, we're going to need guys to actually teach these classes. And you talk to Robert Barden over at CFI or some of these other guys, or Bart over at the Tile Council. They'll tell you they've got trainers all throughout the country. I mean, they're located in all states. But then again, what about this? What about a guy who we just mentioned a while ago, who's been on his knees since he was 20, and he's 55 or 56 or 58, and he wants to do something different. What about pulling that guy off the floor and saying, you know what, you're now going to work full-time for the technical college. Now you're going to have a state job working for the technical college, teaching the curriculum that's been developed by CFI, NWFA, and CTEF. And so going back to my original point, I want to reiterate that we are definitely going to need help at the local level. And so far, the people I've asked about this have been incredibly willing to help because, like I said before, they're going to benefit as well. Look, Don Roberts said it best at the launch meeting back in 2019. This is an industry problem, and it needs to be an industry solution. Yes. Everybody needs to be somehow involved in this. And I think if you're listening to this podcast and you're still on, please ask yourself, what are you doing? Could you be one of the people that help us execute something locally?
No, I agree. It needs to be. I think installers helped perpetuate this situation in the very beginning. I think retailers were able to take advantage of it. And I think the manufacturers are able to take advantage of the current situation, right? If flooring is not installed properly, it fails. So now they move more flooring. Like I don't really want to fix that problem. I get to sell more product. Retailers, they then get to sell more, and you can pay unskilled people less money to get it done. So it's this ever perpetuating problem, and it's going to take all levels to get behind it and fix it, make skilled labor, get things installed properly, have retailers up their wages and what they're charging the public. There's a lot going on, but we all do need to get involved. I keep, for the longest time, I was saying, when I get a store, I'm going to do this. When I get a store, I'm going to do that. And so I've now decided I can't wait until I get a store. So this Saturday, I have a local group just called Arizona Flooring Installers. I only let people from Arizona in it. I said, I got a pool at my place. I'll get some beers. I'll get some hamburgers, hot dogs. I'll grill them, bring the family. Let's hang out and get to know each other. Let's build a local community, right? I don't care if you're a retailer or an installer. Like, let's get together and hang out, right? I don't have competition in a city of 4.5 million people. I have, there's enough work for everybody. You don't worry me. And if I can build a partnership with you, and that maybe I find somebody to subcontract for, maybe I find an installer that's really good at something I don't do, and I can start saying, well, I'll just bid it, but then I'll give you the work, right? And I'll take 10 cents on the yard or whatever just to facilitate it. I can build relationships to make that happen. And I think that's what you're looking for is, here's this national problem. I need local communities that are willing to help facilitate our stuff once it's in place and ready to go. And if we're not building communities like that, it's just you're going to hit a brick wall.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, again, industry problem, industry solution. Look, you take a look at Mohawk, Shaw, Engineered Floors, and the WFCA. They are the entities that have so far contributed financially to the foundation. And we need to go beyond that, and I will. And I would tell you, if there are what I call some of these second-tier suppliers listening to this podcast now, expect a phone call from me. We need to sit down and talk, and get your checkbook ready, because at the end of the day, look, they're going to benefit as well. You talked about failed floors earlier. I sometimes I would love to know. I would love to be able to get the data on how much the flooring manufacturers spend on inspections, right? Sending an independent inspector out, right? I would love to know. Look, the inspector doesn't go visit a job that's perfect. They visit a problem job. And look, problem jobs are an issue for everyone. I think the local retailer, the consumer remembers, where they bought that floor from, if they have a problem with it. And of course, consumers that are unhappy are going to tell a lot more people about their experience than a happy customer, right? So I think, to get the training in place and to get it right, to get people trained is going to help. Is going to help the quality not only of installation, but also eliminate some more of these costs for inspections and things like that. So, no, look, I think everybody has a piece to play in this thing, and from the manufacturers to the distributors to the retailers, and even fellow installers, helping build this trade profession up, and not being afraid to bring friends into it, right? What we call the legacy approach, where you actually know somebody that you actually bring into the business as well. Again, industry problem, industry solution.
I agree. And you'd mentioned earlier, I know NTCA and NWFA, CFI, they've got trainers regionally all across America, which is great. Right. But a lot of these guys are still running businesses on top of it. But I also don't know how many of them are. It doesn't seem like a lot of new trainers are being created. And so without bringing in new people, we won't be able to keep up with demand, because you can't train new people to become these trainers if you don't have new people coming in. And so we have to solve this problem, because it just continues to exacerbate itself. It's getting worse and worse and worse the longer it goes. And so we've got a lot of work to do. and we need to get cracking on it. And the sooner the better.
Yeah, a lot of work to do on all levels, really. I mean, and everybody has to play a part. I can't say that enough. Look, something like this, whether it's the Floor Covering Education Foundation or whatever, it should have been created 10, 15 years ago. Honestly, and look, this might not win me some friends here, but I will tell you that when all of the consolidation started happening in the flooring industry years ago, that should have been part of the initiatives. I mean, look, I just mentioned the big three, and I mentioned, Mohawk, Shaw, and Engineered Floors, of course. Mm-hmm. Those are the largest. And by the way, I don't mean to forget Dixie. I have some great friends that work over at Dixie. The Dixie Group, they make some wonderful carpet as well. So far, they haven't been one of our contributors, but they're on my list to go visit. But you take a look at these guys and what they've done, and look, I really appreciate their their support of the foundation. It really means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's gotta start somewhere, right? We all have to be able to jump on board at some point, and it may just start by knowing it exists. And right. as it continues to grow and gain some steam behind it and momentum, there's going to become more opportunities. Like you said, it's you and Kay right now. You've got two people. You got a lot to do, but there isn't necessarily the ability to bring someone else on. But as you grow and keep accomplishing more, there are going to be job opportunities. There's going to be local opportunities to just volunteer and help get something going. And so people need to pay attention to their industry.
No doubt. And by the way, one of the other things that we've done, and by the way, this wasn't an easy thing to do, but we've interviewed and selected and hired a marketing firm. In fact, you were in our booth. Mm-hmm. The graphics were all created by our new marketing firm. We're really happy about that. By the way, they've just updated our website. So if nobody has seen it yet, I strongly encourage you to take a look at fcef.org. It is, I think it's a phenomenal website. And there's going to be more information added. We wanted to get that site up just prior to the Surfaces show. We accomplished that. But we're also going to be adding more pages to that. We're going to be adding a lot of videos. While we were there at Surfaces, we videoed a lot of people, a lot of installers providing testimonials. We interviewed some of our board members and so forth and so on. So our marketing team has done a phenomenal job. We're really happy about the group that we hired. And one of the things I want to do, you talk about local engagement, is how about career fairs, job fairs? Mm-hmm. What, I've been to a couple in my lifetime. I've been to a couple with, my daughters when they were trying to select colleges and things like that. What about having these local retailers I just mentioned get together, present at a job fair? Well, you may think, well, how do we go about that? What do we do? I don't know how to do that. Well, what if we, as the foundation, could work with our marketing team and develop a job fair kit, right? That basically we'd provide it to local retailers that we're going to present at a job fair. Maybe it has, those pull-up banners that you saw in our booth at Surfaces, maybe mm-hmm. brochures, maybe those kind of things. So, look, again, I would tell you this. I've already said it a number of times, but it bears repeating again. There's a lot of work we're going to do on the national level, but we've got to get partners that are going to work with us and help this effort at the local level. Yeah. And so that's what, local people can do, but on the national level, the big companies that, we're looking for financial support. And by the way, let's go to the middle here. You talk about, I've addressed the retail side. I've addressed, manufacturing and supply, how they are going to be contributing financially. Look, what about distributors? There's some great distributors in our industry. I've already talked to a couple who have offered their warehouses for training facilities, right? Who said, listen, if you get a group of guys around the Atlanta, Georgia area, like William M. Bird and Company, the company I mentioned that I went to work for a number of years ago, they have a ginormous warehouse just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. If we could get 8 or 10 guys who wanted to go through a CFI class around Atlanta, Georgia for 2 weeks or 5 weeks, we're going to partner with local distributors to rope off a corner or, 2,000, 5,000 square feet, whatever is needed to actually conduct that class locally. I think, again, I keep going back to this local engagement, local involvement. Certainly we can take guys and send them to the CFI class over in Forney, Texas, or take them and send them to the wood class in St. Louis, Missouri. Once you do that, you start talking about airfare or travel costs and meals on the road and hotels and things like that. I think if we can take it locally, we're going to be a lot more successful in that regard as well.
Oh, I'm going to have to disagree with you here. And I understand it's more expensive here. Okay. More people need to be involved on a local level. I 100% agree with that. How many installers don't even know that the flooring magazines exist, or that there's these online communities, right? Like if you look at all these Facebook groups that I'm in, it probably represents 1% of installers nationally. Like in America, it's absolutely nothing. So we definitely need more local engagement. We need to get at people interacting locally and build this community up. I think that's going to help. But one of the best things about going to a training is usually you have to head outside your local area. So you're meeting new people. If you know local installers, you're getting outside of your normal mix. Okay. And so you deal with situations when you're installing and you have regional issues, right? Like how I install a floor in Phoenix is not how I'm going to install a floor on the coast of Florida or in the middle of Wisconsin. It's just, there's regional differences. And so you meet these people and you start talking about these things and you gain the relationships that you gain, the camaraderie that you gain by going to a training and having it be from guys all over the country really does lend itself to building a stronger community.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I agree. Look, when the old saying is I've never learned anything from people who agree with everything I say and do everything the way I do it. Right. I totally agree with that. And look, there's a certain amount of camaraderie when you're all, out of town from our respective towns and those kind of things. The only reason I said what I said was because we've already had a couple of challenges where people go, okay, listen, the 5-week class in Forney, Texas. Okay, great. I'm willing to go, but I've got a financial issue, right? Yeah. I mean, you guys are going to pay for 2,500 of it. I can come up with the other 2,500. Fair enough. I got that. But man, now I gotta, this like this one guy, he was just outside of Atlanta, in fact, and he was going to need to fly from Atlanta over to Forney, Texas. Or he could have driven and taken a couple of days. Now he's got, 5 weeks of hotel bills and things like that.
Correct.
And so that's that. I guess that's what I was referencing. Yeah. If you can eliminate that, I think. Because it is going to be an issue with some people. Now, let me address that real quick as well. We've had some conversations around that, and this is a hot topic. If you like hot topics and controversial topics, here's one. What about a retailer or a contractor covering the other portion of it, right? What if you had a retailer that said, I will, or a flooring contractor looking for helpers, I will cover the balance. I will cover the, listen, guy, you've got to come up with the other 2,500, just for an example, right? But I'll cover all of your travel and hotel things. But the thing is, it's really a loan, right? It's really a loan, and you got to work for me. And by the way, some people go, well, that's not going to work. And I was in a meeting where I shared this idea and talked, and honestly, it was completely divisive in the room. Half of the people in the room said, yeah, I would do that. I need people bad enough. I would do that. Absolutely. Just get me the guy, tell me who he is, and I'll do it. The other half of the room said, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. There's no way I'm going to do it. So just to tell you this other thing, that the attorney that's on retainer for the World Floor Covering Association, his name is Jeff King. Jeff has developed contracts. It's actually, it reads like a loan contract. Yeah. And those contracts are downloadable from the WFCA website. Mm-hmm. And they're specifically for this purpose, for saying, okay, you want to go? Fantastic. I'll cover this amount. The balance is going to be whatever, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It's payable back in these installments. If you don't, work for me anymore, if you leave me or whatever, it's like a balloon payment, whatever. Yeah. But so look, I guess that's one of the concepts that we're still flushing out, is how to cover the balance for an installer who has the desire, mm-hmm. but doesn't have the ability to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think essentially you're talking indentured servitude, and I don't think people are going to be like, what is this term you're using? But that's right. What it is. And there was a time, and I would love to see this happen again, to be honest, you used to have to pay to learn a trade. You would go pay the blacksmith to learn blacksmithing. You didn't just go in and work and we pay people to learn now when we can't even get them to come in. So I don't think that's a bad deal. And I get trying to solve the problem, right? Because now you're taking a guy, like you said, he's got to go there for 5 weeks. He's got a hotel bill. He's got a rental car he's paying for. But he also, if he has a wife and kids at home, or, he's not living with mom and dad, he's got rent or a mortgage to pay. How do you pay that when you're not making any money? So there's lots of considerations. So I get having to train locally, and I love the idea, but I don't want to discount people like just getting training locally, because there is an experience to be had when you have to travel for it. But you're right in that if somebody would step up and be willing to pay this and sign a contract like that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If that's what's going to get it done so that we can get somebody that's actually interested in this industry trained properly, I'm all for it. Just lose some money. What, you might lose a couple $1,000s. I'll tell you what, if your business is in such a bad place that you can't afford to lose a couple $1,000s a year, you're not running a very good business.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that as well. Look, you talk about, people being paid to train, or people being paid to learn, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Part of our challenge, Kyle, is not just the fact that a lot of people don't know this career path exists, but it's also, we're competing against a lot of other trades. We're competing against, I would tell you, I'm doing researches on Google and so forth. It's amazing how many other construction-related trades need more people. Yeah. So we're fighting against that, and these are construction-related trades that might be top of mind that people already know about. I mean, look, there was I was talking to Robert Varden the other day, and he was telling me that of course he lives down in the Dallas area. They're running TV ads in Dallas for long haul truckers, right? Mm-hmm. And says, listen, instant placement, and we will pay 100% of all of your training. In fact, we'll pay you to get trained. Yep. Okay, so that's the kind of thing we're dealing with and competing against as well. So
correct.
It's a challenge.
How many other industries are already further ahead? That's legitimately the problem, is everybody else identified this issue and has started putting things in place, or they're faster to act. Right.
Well, and that's a great point. And you take a look at the collaboration. You just automotive repair, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, look, I grew up watching TV commercials about Mr. Goodwrench, right? Certified to work on GM vehicles, right? Okay. The automotive industry started this decades and decades ago. But the flooring industry has never come together to address the issue until now. And, going back to one of the very first things we talked about in this podcast is, I took this job because I thought we could make a difference. I had a very good job at CCA Global. I was vice president of merchandising, and honestly, I thought I would be there until I retired. But the more I would tell you, there's a person that I talked to when I was considering this role. I don't make any big decisions without seeking a lot of counsel. And I talked to some people that I trust and got their advice. And there was one particular guy who said, Jim, number one, I think it'd be a brilliant career move. Number two, if I were 20 or 25 years younger, I would be fighting you for that job. I would want to do that. And number three, he said, Jim, if you and the foundation are even moderately successful, you'll have an enormous impact on this industry. Mm-hmm. And then he said, how often do you get a chance to do that, to be a part of something that impacts the industry? And honestly, it was that conversation that kind of put me over the edge and said, you know what, I wasn't sure I wanted this gig, but I want it now. I want to be a part of something that's going to change it.
No, I think he's 100% right. It's a huge billions of dollars industry. And so if you're, like you said, if you're moderately successful, it's going to affect millions of people and equate to, millions of dollars in better revenue. It's not all about money, but that's what it'll come down to. But people's lives will be changed because of it. And that's amazing. When somebody can gain a career that they can let, let's say a downtrodden neighborhood, right? And it's traditionally both parents have to work. Kids are ignored as they go through elementary school, right? Like you're not generally going to raise a good person. That's the wrong word. You're not going to raise most likely a super successful person out of that environment, right? They're going to end up working paycheck to paycheck in the same situation. But if you're able to introduce somebody from that lifestyle to being able to own a business that they can make great money at, and all of a sudden mom can start staying home with the kids and paying attention to them and giving them the love and care and nurturing that they need, you could effectively change generations of that family, but you could change generations within that neighborhood, because maybe now he starts looking for help and he gets his neighbors on board. You could change an entire neighborhood that way.
Yeah. And look, I will tell you, as you were talking, I'm thinking about Marquis Wright. Mm-hmm. He's one of the guys on our poster. And if you listen to Marquis and listen to his story, I think he had a tough go of it when he was younger and found flooring. And he'll tell you, becoming a flooring installer and sticking with it and becoming successful, I mean, it changed his life. And, when I first talked to him and first met him, he said, you know what, I didn't just do it for me. I did it to I started my own business to give members of my family jobs. And, what a great higher calling that, I think it's maybe his brothers or cousins that are working with him. I mean, he runs the crew, Marquis does, it's his business, and he's got family employees. I mean, he's employed people, and he takes great pride in that. And as well, he should. I think that's an honorable thing to do. So
for sure.
But yeah, there's a tremendous number of success stories out there.
There is. And hopefully this creates more, to be honest. So I'd love to keep going. I know we could go all day. I really do. But
no doubt.
Besides fcef.org, where else can people find you, reach out to you? If manufacturers want to donate money, if an installer wants to get on board of how they can go advocate for you, how are we reaching out? What are we doing?
Great question again. So real quick, my email address is going to be JAARON. So first initial, last name, JAARON @fcef.org. And I'm going to do something maybe not everybody would ordinarily do. I'm actually going to offer my cell phone number as well. call or text me. My cell phone number is 803-466-1904. And so, look, I encourage people to reach out if you just want to have a conversation about what we're doing and learn how you can help locally. If you got some sort of other idea, like I said earlier, that some of the things that I'm spending the most amount of my time on are things that weren't on my list to do when I took the job. Like, this thing with Goodwill or some of these other this thing with the Technical College System of Georgia. I could go on. We've got a lot more projects than just those two. I'm looking at my whiteboard on my wall, and we've got tons of them. And most of these projects, they weren't on my list to do. They came from someone else saying, hey, what about this? And so I will tell you that this is not a pride of ownership thing for me. I'm not one of these people that think, if the idea didn't come from me, it's not a good idea. Look, we've got enough of those people in this industry, and I'm not one of them. I know I don't have all the answers. I know I don't always have the best ideas. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey, what do you think about this? Have you tried this? Man, I am open to any ideas that help solve this thing. I really am. Let's take the best ideas and let's continue to duplicate and run with these things. So by all means, please have them reach out.
Awesome. No, thank you for putting all that out there. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Like I said, I'm encouraged to finally see action being taken after just kind of seeing the creation of this thing. And then it looked like it was just going to be a board of guys sitting around and talking, but now there's movement. And so us on the ground, all of us guys that are listening to this, it's now our responsibility to help keep pushing this momentum forward. They're not going to do it on their own. No one industry organization is going to solve this by themselves. And so thank you for taking on the role. I'm sure your position at CCA was much more lucrative and you probably took a pay cut to do this. But look, when it's like a passion project, it's not about money. It's about what you can accomplish moving forward and the change that's needed. And that's going to be more rewarding than anything. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I encourage the listeners to get out, get involved, and go make a difference in your communities and push for this to get some momentum in your area as new things become available. And then Jim, thank you very much for your time. I know it's valuable. I know you have other calls to get to, so thank you.
Hey, well, listen, man, I think it's a great forum you have here. I really appreciate you having me on. And no, it's been fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen as things change. We need to communicate. So this is a great avenue to get out kind of what you're doing.
No doubt. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. That's all the time we have for this week. To keep the conversation going, head on over to the Floor Academy Facebook group. Be sure to subscribe so you can hear each and every episode. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and most major podcast directories. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you think about the show. If you would like to be a guest, have questions or feedback, you can email us at flooracademypodcast@gmail.com. You can help support the show by becoming a patron over at www.patreon.com/flooracademy. Remember to learn while you earn.